August 1955. Mississippi. A 14-year-old boy is dragged from his bed at gunpoint, beaten until his bones crack, an eye gouged out, a bullet through his head, his body tied with barbed wire to a cotton gin fan and dumped in the Tallahatchie River. This is the story of Emmett Till, a child, a lynching, and the spark that set a movement on fire. Before he was a martyr, before he was a symbol, Emmett Till was just a boy. He was born on July 25, 1941, in Chicago, Illinois. His mother, Mamie Till, was only 19 years old when she gave birth. His father, Louis Till, served in the U.S. Army, but never returned home alive. He died in Europe in 1945, under circumstances the military did not fully explain. Emmett would grow up with only the stories his mother told him, and the love she poured into him. Friends and family called him Bobo. He had a mischievous streak, a bright smile, a love for jokes and pranks. Teachers remembered him as playful, sometimes a handful, but always eager to make others laugh. Yet Emmett had challenges too. He developed a stutter as a child, which sometimes made speaking difficult. To manage it, he learned a trick. He would whistle before certain words to steady himself. That whistle would one day be twisted into a death sentence. By the summer of 1955, Emmett was a typical teenager, stylish, confident, full of curiosity. He saved money to buy things that made him look sharp, like cufflinks and fancy socks. He dreamed of one day working with his hands, maybe as a mechanic. But behind Mamie's love, there was fear. She raised her son to know that the world outside their Chicago neighborhood could be cruel. Racism in the North was ugly, yes, but in the South, it was lethal. So when Emmett begged her to let him join his cousins for a summer visit to Mississippi, Mamie hesitated. She warned him, "Down there, you have to be careful. Don't look at white women. Don't speak too boldly. If someone white challenges you, lower your head and move away." Emmett listened, but he was 14. He couldn't imagine the South being so different. He couldn't imagine that one trip would end his life. Mississippi in 1955 was a land trapped in the past. Though slavery had ended 90 years earlier, white supremacy had rebuilt itself into a new system, Jim Crow. In Jim Crow, Mississippi, segregation wasn't just custom, it was law. Signs marked "whites only" over water fountains, restaurants, buses, schools, and even cemeteries. A black person who broke these rules risked their life. Black farmers lived under crushing debt to white landowners. Black families were kept poor, excluded from opportunity, barred from voting through literacy tests and poll taxes. White sheriffs and judges enforced this racial order with brutal efficiency. And then there was the terror of lynching. Between 1877 and 1950, more than 4,000 African Americans were lynched in the United States. Mississippi led the nation in this bloody count. These killings weren't just acts of violence, they were rituals of control, often carried out in public, in front of cheering white crowds. Postcards were printed showing burned or hanged bodies. It was terrorism meant to send a message. This is what happens when black people step out of line. In towns like Money, Mississippi, where Emmett Till would soon arrive, that message was law. When Emmett stepped off the train on August 21, 1955, and entered the home of his great-uncle, Reverend Moses Wright, he had no way of knowing the depth of the danger that surrounded him. 4 days after arriving, Emmett and his cousins went to a small grocery store in Money, Mississippi. It was called Bryant's Grocery and Meat Market, owned by a white couple, Roy and Carolyn Bryant. On August 24, 1955, Emmett walked inside to buy candy. What happened next has been debated ever since. Some witnesses said Emmett may have bragged to friends about having a white girlfriend back in Chicago, and they dared him to talk to the white woman behind the counter. Others said he simply paid for his candy and left quietly. But Carolyn Bryant later claimed he grabbed her hand asked her for a date, and when she pulled away, he wolf-whistled at her. What is certain is this: Carolyn Bryant left the store shaken. In 1955 Mississippi, the accusation that a black boy had flirted with a white woman was enough to mean death. Word spread quickly, and in a state where white supremacy demanded blood for even the slightest challenge, Emmett Till's fate was sealed. 4 nights later, just after 2 a.m. on August 28, 1955, a car pulled up to the home of Reverend Moses Wright. 2 white men stormed inside. They were Roy Bryant, Carolyn's husband, and his half-brother, J.W. Milam. Both were armed. They demanded the boy who had done the talking. Emmett Till was dragged from his bed. His great-uncle Moses Wright pleaded with them to spare the child. His mother had begged him to keep the boy safe. But Bryant and Milam ignored him. They told Wright, "If this isn't the right boy, we'll bring him back." Emmett was forced into their truck and driven into the night. He would never return. For hours, Bryant and Milam tortured him. They beat him with their fists, with pistols, with whatever they had. They broke his bones. They gouged out one of his eyes. Finally, they shot him in the head. To destroy his body, they tied a 75-pound cotton gin fan around his neck with barbed wire and dumped him into the Tallahatchie River. In Mississippi, this was the price of being black. This was the price of a whistle. 3 days later, on August 31st, Emmett Till's body was pulled from the river. It was bloated, disfigured, mutilated beyond recognition. Only a ring on his finger, engraved with his father's initials, LT, confirmed his identity. The authorities wanted to bury him quickly, quietly, to make the body disappear. But Mamie Till refused. She demanded her son's body be returned to Chicago. When the casket arrived, she made a decision that would change history. She insisted on an open casket funeral. She said, "Let the world see what they did to my boy." Tens of thousands of mourners came to view Emmett's body. They saw the crushed skull, the missing eye, the bloated face. Photographs of Emmett's corpse, published in Jet magazine, shocked the nation. For the first time, white America could not look away from the horror of lynching. For Black America, it was a confirmation of everything they already knew. Emmett Till's body, displayed in that open casket, forced America to face its own barbarity. September 1955. Bryant and Milam were arrested and charged with murder. Their trial began in the small town of Sumner, Mississippi. The courtroom was segregated. White men filled the jury box. White townspeople crowded the seats, and armed deputies guarded the building. The defense argued that the body pulled from the river wasn't even Emmett Till. They said the corpse was too decomposed. They claimed Mamie Till couldn't possibly identify her son. But the most powerful testimony came from Reverend Moses Wright. At great personal risk, he stood in that courtroom and pointed his finger directly at the men who had taken Emmett from his home. "There he is," he said. It was an act of courage that stunned the court. A black man pointing at white killers in Mississippi was almost unthinkable, but courage was not enough. After only 67 minutes of deliberation, the all-white jury found Bryant and Milam not guilty. One juror later joked, "If we hadn't stopped to drink a soda, it wouldn't have taken us that long." The killers walked free. Weeks later, safe from retrial under the law of double jeopardy, Bryant and Milam sold their story to Look magazine. For $4,000, they openly confessed to the murder of Emmett Till. They felt no remorse. They bragged about it. The acquittal sent shockwaves around the world. Newspapers in Europe, Africa, and Asia covered the case. America's image as a beacon of democracy was shattered. But for African Americans, the message was clear. Justice would not come from the courts. Justice would have to be fought for. Mamie Till became a tireless activist, speaking about her son's murder, demanding change. The NAACP used the case to rally national attention. Just 3 months after the trial, in December 1955, Rosa Parks refused to give up her seat on a Montgomery bus. When asked later why she made that decision, she said, "I thought of Emmett Till." The lynching of a 14-year-old boy helped ignite the modern civil rights movement. Decades passed, but Emmett Till's name did not fade. In the 1980s and 1990s, new investigations reopened questions about the case. In 2007, Carolyn Bryant, the woman at the center of it all, admitted in an interview that much of her testimony had been a lie. She said Emmett had never grabbed her, never threatened her. The story that cost the boy his life had been fiction. Subscribe to this channel